All right. I did not insult you. I was just saying you look different. You don't look as different as you usually do. And you look like you lost weight, my friend.
Yeah, I keep getting that, and I keep checking the scale, and it doesn't doesn't prove the
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 theory is off.
hypothesis. Yeah.
I don't know. It looks like it though.
Yeah, well, hopefully what's happening is just recomposition. That's what the goal has
Oh,
been.
okay.
So,
Okay.
but it is kind of funny, when you're doing that, or when you're training somebody through
Mhm.
that, and you're checking the scale, and you're just like, man, I wonder if this is working because the scale isn't moving.
Yeah. You're like, why won't you do this for me? Like,
Yeah, but yeah, but yeah, it's kind of funny because just yesterday in the gym, somebody came up to me and was like, "Man, you're looking a lot more ripped or
yeah.
svelte or whatever." I was like, "Well, that's good. That's the goal."
You know what? I haven't heard svelte in a while. I like that word. We need to use that word more often. Looking svelte.
That that would be my optimum situation where I am svelte as I was when I was in my 20s and early 30s.
Yeah, yeah. Before you became Simon, is what you're saying. Became this version of this guy.
Yeah, well, at some point when I was about I've told you this before, I'm sure, but when I was like 37, my body was like, we're getting bigger. So
Yeah.
you decide how. You
You
decide if we
decide
get
how.
bigger, with some muscle or with some. And then the pandemic hit, and pre-pandemic, I was really
Yeah.
quite quite buff and quite jacked, and
Yeah.
then I just let it all go for like
Right.
a year and a half during the
Yeah.
pandemic.
You're like, well, listen, uh, you know.
Yeah. And ever since then, I've just like crawling back to
Yeah.
previous fitness level. Just
I like the term
crawling.
crawling back, like not
Oh,
sprinting, just crawling
no,
back.
crawling back.
Wow, man.
Well, it's funny. You seem like somebody who's always just been like
Mhm.
uh just lean
Yeah,
and
my entire
never
life. Yeah.
yeah, never had a problem with gaining weight or anything like that.
Yeah.
That's how I imagined my life until about 37, like I said, then it was just kind of
Yeah.
like, oh crap, what's going on?
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me is like I don't have a lot of any real experience of kind of yo-yoing or being in a different body type or shape. It's
Yeah.
like I just look like me. Like from six, it's like when I was 16, I was really like skinny, like gangly skinny. And then I
Hmm.
started lifting weights and, became muscular. And at that like 18 on is kind of like, if besides my hair, it's pretty much been the same looking
Pretty much
person.
been the
It's like,
same.
oh, that's you. It's you again. Yeah. It's
People
bro.
can't believe I was ever skinny.
Simon.
They just no, they just assume that I've always been a big guy. I was
Yeah.
like, no, actually, I was being considered a big guy is a completely
Yeah.
like I still don't think of myself that way.
It's
That's
interesting.
because you like I was made fun of for being so skinny and small when I was a
Mm.
kid,
Yeah.
So to think of yourself as, like this big linebacker type
Yeah.
body shape, which is just like
Interesting.
that is just not how I imagine myself at all. But then I see the mirror and I'm like, oh crap, that is.
I would pay money to watch you talk to yourself in the mirror. It would be like unbelievable. Like a great show. Like, can we video that? I mean, that's
Oh man. It would be like a tragic comedy is what it
yeah.
would be, where it's like,
Tragic comedy.
yeah,
Speak
you're laughing at this guy's tragedy.
Speaking of that, I would consider a great show recommendation for you. I'm watching this and I'm like, Simon would be very into this. I feel it, man. Like I
All
feel it
right. All
deeply.
right, I'm
It's,
ready.
it's called The Curse and it's on Paramount Plus. I don't have Paramount Plus, but I got the free trial just to watch it
Oh,
because
okay.
Emma Stone is in it and she plays a very different person in this. But it's like it's very cringy and there's a lot of uncomfortable dialogue all the time.
Hmm.
It's like constant. It's It's like how much cringe can you withstand? Basically, is the show.
Like cringe as in bad writing, or cringe as in
No,
these people are saying things that are just
like
terrible
really,
things to
why would
say.
you say
Yeah.
that? And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
like
okay.
most shows like or movies, you'll get a little bit of that, and then they pan off of it to something else.
Yeah.
I feel like the point of this is like, oh no, this is the extended cut all the time of cringiness. Like you're gonna
Just
feel
sit
this,
in
whether
that
you're gonna
moment.
sit in it for a long time. And how it's shot and the music doesn't match the show, but I think that was intentional. It's like
That's funny.
it's strange. It's just a lot of talking around this basically HGTV show called Flip Philanthropy. And this couple, they're trying to basically infiltrate this New Mexico town and almost like gentrify it. And it's this whole
Okay.
weird dichotomy of them trying to do that, but like they're trying to be respectful, but they just stick their foot in their mouth all the time about it. And it's very cringy, like most of the
This
time.
this reminds me of the first time I ever watched Curb Your Enthusiasm,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I didn't know what it was. I didn't even know because when Seinfeld was on, I didn't pay attention to who Larry David
Larry David.
was.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when Curb Your Enthusiasm, the first time I ever saw it, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know who Larry
Yeah.
David was.
Yeah.
It looked just like really cheaply shot because like the first season or so, I mean, it looks
Yeah.
really cheap.
Yeah, it
It's a
does.
really cheap show,
Yeah.
looking show
Yeah.
at least. And then it's just these long takes of people, especially Larry David,
Yeah.
just saying the
Yeah.
most terrible things.
Yes.
And
It's
you're
kind
just
of
like,
like that. Yeah.
and then there's the
Yeah.
and and I was like, oh, okay. It took me like a few episodes to like figure out
Yeah.
Curb Your Enthusiasm. Once I figured out, what the point of it is, then I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this is wonderful.
Yeah. I really think you'd be into the show, The Curse. Like even like the director of the show. Like I think I'm not saying you would identify with the guy, but I think you
Uh,
would kind of like appreciate his critique of the show he's producing, like his own critique and the actors. Like he's always like kind of ripping the people in it. He's like, I mean, what are you doing? Like it's just like
that's awesome.
it's like he's got his demons. This director has massive demons, and he's just so weird. Like, everybody in the show was so weird. I know this sounds bad. I'm like, oh Simon, you would like
No,
this.
actually, I'm really loving this concept because I feel like if you just had a camera crew follow me around
Yeah,
in the show that I'm in right now,
yeah,
it would be a bit like that.
right.
It's like I'm just constantly trying to say things, at rehearsal to make people either laugh or just be uncomfortable or whatever,
See,
I'm just, I just um and and I hate the show. I,
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, I it's not that the show is so bad, but it's a Sondheim musical, and
right.
I have a real lack of appreciation for it. I got it,
Yeah.
so I can't share this until we've done this show with the rest of no, but people know that about me,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so like
yeah,
and so I'm sitting there and like maybe I'll be in the wings waiting for the next time I go on or whatever, and
yeah.
I'm listening to what everybody else is saying on stage, and I'm turning to the people around me. I'm like, this is the worst freaking dialogue I've ever heard in my life. It's like I can't believe the stupid crap we have to say in this show. I just can't believe it. It's just awful.
You would be into
It's
the show,
just
I'm telling you, man.
awful. And so people are constantly just looking because the rest of the crew seems to be really into it. From
Oh,
what I
okay.
can tell, they just love it.
Oh,
And people are like, "Oh, this is so great," or "This is so great." I mean, just last night, I think the guy who plays the lead is fantastic, but
yeah.
I think his songs in the show are the worst freaking songs in the show. I mean,
Mm,
they're just, in my opinion, they're just awful.
yeah.
And I turned to the person next to me last night as he's singing like the finale of the show. He's belting it and he's doing a fantastic job. And I just turned to him and was like, man, this is the worst song. This is one of the worst songs
Simon.
I've ever heard in my life. And she's like, no, he's doing great. I was like, yeah, he's singing the hell out of this song, but it's lipstick on a pig.
You're
You
just
know, it's just
unsatisfied.
awful.
Just
Just
typical.
so
Not surprising, Simon. Literally.
yeah.
I'm literally not surprised. I'm like, yeah, sounds like Simon. Yeah, I hate this work.
The thing is, I love the process. I was talking to, Shannon about this the other week, and I was saying, I actually love just being in the process of creating a play.
Yeah,
And I love being on stage with the other performers, and I love all this stuff. And I'm just like, man, I wish this was a show I actually enjoyed, because that would just
yeah.
take it to the next
Sure, of course.
level, right?
You would
I
think so.
wish. But I love acting. I really do. I
Yeah,
just have a
yeah,
real passion for all the facets of it, and I'm trying to decide what I want to do next. And I'm really caught between, do I want to audition for other shows that other people are doing, or do I want to direct, another
yeah.
show or something? Because every facet of it, it's fascinating to me. And
Mm.
so I just want to be a part of it. But at the same time, even when I love something, it's just not free from my criticism. It's not, you know what I mean? It's like I can love something
I love that.
and think it's just wonderful. But at the same
Yeah,
time, I'm like, yeah, but I made pizza the other night, and I
yeah,
made this sourdough crust,
yeah,
and the flavor was wonderful. Everything I did, I made this like pesto marinara pizza
yeah.
sauce to go on. I mean, everything was so good.
Sure,
But then I was like, you know what? The crust is a little too chewy. And nobody else is saying this. It's just
sure.
me,
Yeah, this is the artist, Simon.
Everybody else is like, oh, this is really good. And I was like, yeah, but I got to figure out this crust here, because it's a great flavor, but it's just it's not quite the texture I want,
Yeah, yeah. Then I'm not
So
surprised. This is typical Simon stuff. I mean, when I first met you, you just hated your music. Like,
yeah.
you're like, oh, I really hated this album. I did,
If
like,
if anybody hates my music, trust me, I hate it more than you do.
no doubt about it.
People are like, like, well, I don't want to criticize your music. I was like, no, go ahead. I,
No,
you
please
know,
do.
yeah,
Let's have
yeah,
a discussion
please
about why we hate
rip
this.
it apart, because that's what I do.
That's what
That's
I
why I
do.
haven't released an album in like over a year,
Yeah,
because I've been working on tons of stuff, but none of it's good enough. And since I don't have the same deadline that I've been giving myself before,
yeah.
now I have the freedom to not release anything.
Okay, I have a great idea for you. It's just like your whole premise should be about just making it and never releasing it. That's
Oh,
the actual album. Is there
that's
That's the play that never happened. Just the videoing is just of you ripping the play
oh,
but never actually doing it.
that's actually a brilliant premise, and I think I'm gonna have to go with it. I'm gonna have to write a play about a play that gets canceled.
Yes. That's like your thing. I feel it so deeply. Like,
And- because most of these things, they do like a show that everything goes wrong, but
yeah,
it still turns out okay in the end.
right.
But I want to do a show that everything goes wrong and it just fails.
It just fails. Yeah.
It
Who's doing
just
that? No one's doing
fails.
that. It's like, oh,
Nobody's.
where's the crescendo? Nothing. That's just
Nope.
like
Nope. Sorry.
what you saw is
It
what happened. It
just
bombed.
the floor keeps falling. Sorry.
The album that never keeps happening.
There's no redemption here. It's
Yeah.
just
That would be so Simon. That would like be like, oh yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
oh, I
This
love
is
it.
his style. It never gets to the point.
I
Opening night. What's
watched.
that? Like,
Well, I mean, the great thing about this premise is that the first two productions I tried to be a part of
yeah.
after moving here, I've told you about this, that they
Yeah.
both neither of them made it to stage,
I mean,
and so it's the perfect premise for me because I've lived this.
like making the album, like, well, yeah, the making part is the big part of it. It's
Yeah.
like the album, the release,
I mean,
no.
it is the part I enjoy the most. Although I
Right.
was telling Shannon the other day that I just have this, I have this real desire to start performing live again,
Mm,
music. But
yeah.
I haven't been able to translate that desire to actually seeking out musicians to perform with.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
is, ultimately
Yeah.
what's holding me back is
That's
having to
holding you
actually
back.
work with other people. If I could just clone myself,
Oh, wow.
and then I could kick myself out of the band.
Haven't we already talked about your other alternate Simon?
That's
It was like,
right.
that was actually maybe the most revealing episode because it got real deep. Like you
It
started
did.
going down a rabbit hole, and I was like, this is unbelievable. It's like,
Which turned into my podcast, which is funny. I was just talking to somebody about this the other day when I
yeah,
was telling them, oh, it was because Shannon likes, and for those who are listening and haven't been along for the whole ride here, Shannon is my wife,
yes.
but she loves to do this thing called the question game. For the record, it's not a game. It's just
Okay.
you answer questions. That's
Okay.
it. There's no points. There's no nothing. So Shannon will just write out a bunch of questions at random and then pass them around, and you don't get to choose your question. You just pick it, just
Yeah.
out of a grab bag, basically. And anyway, so the other night, we were playing this game. My parents are in town and they were over, and my first question that I got was, "What's something that you regret?"
Mm,
And I was like, "Oh boy."
man, what a bombshell of a question. Jeez, man.
So my parents are here, and I'm trying to think, okay, well, what can I admit to in front of them?
Oh
So
boy.
I actually have them circle back to me so I can think. But once it dawned on me, like, because I also wanted it to be something really recent, and so anyway, then it dawned on me. I was like, well, duh, I regret. So this last year I took a break. I was like, okay, I'm going to take a break from the podcast so that I can finish these other projects and then I'll
Yeah.
get back to the podcast. Well, I took a break from the podcast, still haven't finished these other projects, and still haven't returned back to the podcast. So, so I was saying, yeah, I regret that decision to stop because what has happened is a real traffic jam of
hmm
creative projects and trying to I feel like a traffic cop trying
Yeah.
to like get this traffic jam organized and moving again. And I'm just like, man, I'm a terrible traffic cop, I guess, because nothing's
Just
moving. We are,
stuck in the mud.
yeah, it's a real stalemate here.
I quite enjoyed your podcast too. As I avid listener for sure.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I've got lots of ideas for it, and
Yeah.
uh, I even have episodes either written or half written, and I just need to
Yeah.
get back to doing it again. I need to get out of this traffic jam.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I only have one other episode on the books. No, two. And then I'm not sure what I'm going to do. This is the only thing I'm keeping in my life, in my podcast for the foreseeable future.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know. I just, I don't feel inspired to do other stuff. Like, I get a lot of energy out of this. This always makes
Yeah.
me happy. Like today, I don't think I was in the best mood before I got on, and I immediately started talking to you. I felt a lot better.
Oh, good.
And yeah, yeah. But you always do that for me. I always appreciate that about you.
Well,
And
yeah,
yeah,
I always look forward to these. When I missed you the other week, and I had the schedule mixed up.
yeah,
I was literally devastated because I
yeah.
was like,
It's a
oh,
downer,
I
man.
missed talking to
I know
Darian,
it's very
And
important. So I'm like, oh, I'm keeping
yeah,
this and everything else, and I have to like really be inspired to want to
gotcha.
have. I think it's like having this conversation regularly has taught me the type of conversation I want in my life on a regular
Mm,
basis.
yep,
And if it's not that, if it's just kind of superficial and it's not interesting, I just don't want to do it. Honestly, I really don't care. It's that
yeah,
much. I don't know. It's just a
yeah.
cutback.
yeah, I was talking to somebody, having a similar conversation to what things that we touched on before, but
Yeah.
that type of curiosity.
Yeah.
Um, because if a person is, well read, um,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. If a person knows a lot about a certain subject, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That doesn't make them interesting.
True.
Being genuinely curious, that makes a person very
Yeah.
interesting to me. So
Yeah.
a person, they might be completely ignorant about all the stuff that I'm interested in, but as long as they are curious in a way that I am also curious, then we're going
Yeah.
to have a great conversation.
Exactly right. We just never miss a beat on here. And I knew that from the first conversation. I was like, oh, I hope he wants to do this over time. Like, I really
Well,
enjoy this. It's
it's
just
been
not a lot
years
of
now.
things. Yeah, it's been years. There's not a lot of things I'm committed to in my life long term. I don't
Mm-mm.
look at it as a flaw. I just look at it as like I'm very selective of the very long term things that I want to be a part of.
Yeah.
And I just find I lose interest in stuff if it's not stimulating to me. And that's what I always tell my wife. We've been together almost 20 years. I'm like, you're one of the only people I want to be around regularly. Like, it's
Right.
honestly, if it wasn't, I wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't. I'm not,
Yeah.
I don't make believe about that and go, oh, yeah, I'll just stick it out. I just wouldn't. Just like, I just wouldn't.
Well, my 19-year-old son Moses, who's turning 20 here in just a couple of
Jeez, man.
weeks, which is weird, you know.
Yeah.
But he was just kind of humorously saying, "Dad, sometimes I wonder how you and Mom stay together." And it's not because we fight. It's not
Right,
because
right,
we're rude or mean to each other. It's not any of those things. It's just because we're so different.
right, right.
Like our Shannon's and my general philosophies and approaches to most things is very different.
Yeah.
But what I told Moses was is that, well, our marriage is a testament to anybody can make it work if you want to be together.
Mm,
And just
yeah.
like you said, it's like at the end of each day, I want to be with Shannon.
Yeah.
I want to have conversations with her about important things, even when we're so let me give you an example, a really
All right.
recent example. I had proposed a thought experiment, and that's all it was. It wasn't meant to be taken literally. It's just a thought experiment. And it's that um, God did not exist until he created people. I was like, well, how does a being not exist if they're creating things? Well, without someone else to recognize you, you don't exist. And I gave an
Mm,
example, a really simple example of I had no idea who such and such person was. I did not know they existed. So it's not that they literally don't exist, but until you're recognized by somebody else, and doesn't that feel like a real human thing? Where it's
mm,
like we all want to be recognized, like it's an essential part of our own existence to have other people recognize us and who we are, and we want people to understand us, and so on and so forth. um so just this idea that in order for God to have existed, he had to create a world and people it so so that he would
yeah.
have, because existence is about purpose. I think that might be just like way too broad of a definition
Yeah.
or whatever, but I really feel like most of us are just looking for purpose, and that gives us reason for existing. So God needed a purpose, otherwise, therefore, but without purpose, God has no reason for existing. Anyway, it was just a thought experiment that nobody exists until they are recognized by somebody else. And Shannon was just like, that's stupid. She just thought it was the dumbest thing. She's like, that's so stupid. And apparently, when I wasn't around, I was at rehearsal, and Shannon decides to tell my parents about how stupid that thing was. She's like, well, apparently she brought it up by saying that sometimes I bring up just thoughts and ideas that they're just philosophical ideas, and Shannon's she's a lot more pragmatic than that,
Right.
and she's like, I don't care, you know. She's like, you're bringing up this stuff, constantly reading, about ancient civilizations and
Sure.
ancient beliefs and philosophies and things like that, and bringing it up and things like that, and she's just like, sometimes it's just not of interest to her at all whatsoever, and that's okay.
It's okay. You're like, well,
So
see, I actually like those types of things. I like when you were saying it, I was like, yeah, it kind of makes sense to me. It's kind of like, okay, if you and I is another thought experiment. If Shannon never introduces us, you don't exist to me.
exactly,
You don't
yeah,
exist to me. You're not a real person. You maybe this is someone's spouse, whatever, but like if I don't meet someone, they're not real to me.
yeah,
I never heard their name. I don't see them. Like
yeah.
there's, I could go an entire life, and everyone does, without meeting people that exist in the world. Yeah.
It allows us to continue existing normally while horrors are occurring around the
Yes.
globe.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like what's happening in Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
I feel really torn up about it. I'm not, and so there's no, and I've kept up with it kind of, on the news and things.
Yeah.
But I am guilty as guilty as the next person, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's like I don't want to feel it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And and it would be easier to not to continue not even knowing of the existence of these other people. And that's a terrible thing to say,
Right.
I even feel awful admitting to
But a
that,
lot of
but
people feel that way.
I
That's
think that's a very
pervasive.
human way to
Yeah.
feel. It's a
Of
very human
course.
way to feel, where it's like I can't take on the suffering of millions of people,
Yeah.
you know.
That's
I
right.
can give to the Red Cross, or I can do whatever,
Yeah.
but just knowing that that level of suffering exists in the world right now as we speak,
Mm-hmm.
it's just so overwhelming that it's just easier to pretend they don't exist.
That's right. That's pretty normal. I mean, and people do that with even small things in their life, not even like big things. It's just
Yeah,
like, nope, that's not real. And this alternate reality, the cognitive dissonance that people have about things, it's a protective mechanism in many ways to not have the insides be on the outside and
yeah.
feel, it's just easier to run. It really is. It's just easier to run. Like why deal with the difficulties of something that's pretty normal behavior, but also a great thought experiment. I'm gonna say it's great. Okay, it's
Thanks.
like okay, so let's transition to this. Okay, so we were talking about let's talk about Highlander, all this stuff, and that is just ripe for this type of conversation, especially when you're talking about immortality, the
Mhm.
possibility. I've had this conversation way more than I ever thought I would have in my life about that topic, which is, I think a lot of people have, to me, very strange ideas about immortality. I feel like
Mm.
my idea is very rational, and I feel like most other people's ideas about immortality are very like rose colored. I'm like, I don't think so. Like, I'm the downer in
Yeah.
the group about it. Guy's so negative about living forever. I'm like, I don't know. I feel very realistic about it. Like,
Yeah, it's like on the one hand, it sounds interesting to be able to live through
or
eons of, the history of the world, and to be there for many important, you know, things that are going on. On the other hand, if I was immortal and could do anything, I would probably just go live on an island somewhere, completely isolated. You know what I mean? It's like,
the Simon approach.
yeah, it's like, yeah, I don't want to deal with all this crap. You know?
Yeah, no. I mean, how many plays would you be directing? It's like, You get bored. I don't know, man. I like, how would you even look at relationships anymore? I mean, you just, it's just a whole bunch of stuff. Everybody just thinks about how great it would be to just live forever. I'm like, I don't know, it's a pretty complex thing. I mean, Duncan MacLeod, I don't know, man. Think about
Yeah,
all that going from all these different time periods. Someone's always after you all the time. It's like that part would be a bummer. I'm like, oh,
that
just let
would
me
be a
live,
bummer.
man.
Yeah,
Jeez, like
yeah.
some crazy guy's always after me.
So apparently, I did a little bit of background research in
Mm,
preparation for this conversation because I was genuinely curious about why such a good idea never really reached its
yeah,
promise,
yeah,
its potential.
right.
And but apparently the original script was it was just like a UCLA student or somebody, and it was just like their final script writing project or something like that. And
Mm,
but apparently it was a lot darker in its original
oh,
conception, and then they hired some guys to like lighten it up. But apparently
right.
the original one was supposed to be more like that the movie The Duelist. You remember
Mm,
that one? Oh gosh, I'm blanking on the name of the star in that movie. Anyway, fantastic movie. But so it was just a lot more bleak
mm,
and something more I think about what you're kind of talking about. Like these guys have been around for so long
yeah,
and their existence just feels really bleak because everything around them dies
yeah,
and they're stuck in this competition to see who will be the last one, and it
right.
feels really pointless. And in fact, apparently the villain in the original script, he was not this lunatic
Yeah,
psycho who enjoyed killing. He was actually just kind of like just more of a guy who was just sick of it all,
yeah.
and that sounds like actually a much more interesting script than
I
what we got,
agree. Yeah,
unfortunately. you
yeah.
know
I think
um
so. I think it would be pretty. I don't know. I just think of like the majority of humanity. Like if it was all of humanity, I mean, there are a lot of people who don't accomplish anything in this amount of time. And just giving them more time would just make them procrastinate even more about
yeah.
this stuff. Like, it's not like you'd be like, oh, I'll be so
Yeah.
productive. Like, when it's
Yeah.
time, like, you'd be like, well, I have forever. I'll put that out for 300 years. And then you just wouldn't get to it. Honestly, you'd just be like milling around. I don't think a lot of it would be that exciting. I really don't. I think
No.
a few people would do incredibly gigantic things. Like, there's a few very motivated humans who would like pretty much run the world because they would
Yeah.
take it and really be like, now I can do everything I've ever wanted to do. But most people, not really. I think it'd be maybe a lot of like if you could somehow kill yourself, a lot of people would do it. I think at some point they'd be like, ah, this is just
Yeah, I'm just kind of done.
kind of done
I'm
with this.
just kind of done.
I was gonna have a latte every day. I mean, for like 500 years. I mean, like, it's like,
So, where does that leave you personally, in your thoughts about an afterlife?
man, there you go, Simon. You had to. This is Shannon probably wouldn't want to hear this, but I'm gonna like, Conrad's dumb. You know what? I don't know. I never thought about it that way. I maybe because I guess maybe there's the thought that you would be different or
Mhm.
that something about you would be I don't know. It's hard to know, actually.
So how do you imagine yourself
Here we
in
go.
in the next life?
I
You know
love
what I
this.
mean? Because you know, I think most of us, when we imagine ourselves in the next life, we imagine our ethnicity
Uh-huh.
and our, even down to our hair color, eye color kind of
Yeah.
things carrying on to that next life, which makes no sense
I
whatsoever.
don't think that. I think mainly because of my several psychedelic experiences.
Yeah.
Like I feel somewhat attached to my personal look here, but I also know it's just bullshit. Also, it's just kind of my thing, messing around. It's an artistic expression. It could be here, it could not be.
Hmm.
I just think I'll like be me, but I'm not concerned with if it was like. other versions of my body. I don't even think that's important. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought that without psychedelics. No way. I'd be like, oh yeah, be me. Like I would look like me. I think I will just continue on as me. Hopefully just like the next chapter of me,
Hmm.
whatever that means. I don't have a really good idea, or I don't feel like this is a great answer, honestly.
That's all right. I don't know if there is a great answer.
Yeah,
Um,
it feels staggered to me. I don't know. It doesn't feel
yeah.
very flowing how what I'm saying. It just feels like, oh,
Well, as somebody within the Christian tradition, do you believe in a literal resurrection? Do you believe in like a resurrection of the physical body to an immortal, perfected body of some sort?
uh, somewhat. You know what? You know what complicates this for me? Ghosts complicate this for me. They really do. Like it's maybe almost like maybe there's like a staging area. Where's the green room? You know, like it's there's so many there's so
Catholics
many
have a purgatory.
there's so many
Mormons have a
incidences,
spirit world.
you know, of like people seeing people and different things. I'm like, all right, those
Yeah.
people, like if they believe like why aren't they up, like where are they? Like they're here hanging out in a house, haunting people. Like what's happening? Like is it a staging room until a certain event? That just feels very unclear to me.
So I'm a dyed-in-the-wool skeptic,
Yeah,
um, which I always feel needs clarification. And that doesn't mean pessimistic,
sure.
and it just means, um, yeah, prove it.
Yeah, yeah. How do you do that? I mean, like,
So I'm a dyed-in-the-wool skeptic about anything ethereal, any kind of like reports of seeing ghosts or anything like
yeah.
that. I'm like, sure, sure you did. But I do think people do have visions of those who have
Mm,
passed on.
yeah.
I would consider those visions
Mm,
workings of the imagination. I would
mm,
not consider them real. I would
right.
not consider them an actual apparition of somebody who's passed on to the next
Yeah,
level of existence or whatnot. But, you know, I concede that I could be completely wrong about that.
right.
I'm just saying I haven't seen evidence that would lead me to conclude that those things are real.
Yeah,
And whenever somebody tells me a story, I'm just like, and some people have told me stories who are, I think, are good resources. You know, they're
right.
not people who I would
The
think,
stable people.
yeah, but I still think there's stuff going on.
Yeah,
And, you know, I've had fever dreams, you
yeah,
know, I've had, you know, experiences where I'm just like, yeah, I know what the brain can do under duress or other
sure.
circumstances. And it can really show you things that
Yeah,
have nothing to do with reality,
right.
you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I'm a real skeptic about all that. So, yeah,
This is not surprising, Simon.
yeah, I know. And you know, as far as like a next life, I'm honestly just not interested in it at all. Not to say that it wouldn't be a good thing for it to happen, but I feel like you are not the kind of person that sits around wondering if you're going to heaven or hell.
No, no, I don't think,
Yeah.
no, no
And,
way.
and in the same way, I'm not
No
interested in
way.
that at all. I'm just, you know, I'm not interested in any kind of like, oh, God's going to judge me at the final
No, I don't
judgment
think about
day or
that. No,
any of that kind of
no.
bull crap. I don't worry about where I'm going to end up. I just worry about the here and now,
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
It's a lot to think about. I think if you pressed other people on it, I think they would, like me, they would have a hard time. Like if like actually thinking it, like there's a difference between just spouting out something you heard versus actually thinking about it. I think my response was one of like, it's just kind of up in the air on some level.
Hmm.
But I think like if you're super diehard and you don't have questions, you'll just spout out whatever has been told to you about it. And that doesn't feel authentic. I mean, because the thing is, you just don't know. You're believing in something. Now, what the actual deal is, how would you know? I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
how, I mean, how would you know? I mean, you just, I believe it'd be awesome But it's just hard to tell. I definitely think there's I don't know. I just think my experience, I've had some wild experiences, man. It's like with psychedelics, I truly believe it shows you something incredible, man. Like whether it's real or not, it just pulls the curtain down and just like, oh, I'm not that important. Like
You
really
feel
not
so
that important. It
small,
feels so small. It
insignificant.
feels so insignificant. So you feel trivial to existence. And I think it just gives you a greater respect for the universe. And but yeah, I don't know. I'm not, but I'm also like, I get a little cringy when I hear someone tells me the universe told me and all that. I'm just, I don't know. It's like, did the hydrogen atoms tell you, or it's like, or is there
Yeah,
something else going on? I'm not saying it couldn't happen. I just like explain it to me. It's like,
yeah.
did a black hole tell you? I mean, I'm not trying to be funny. It's like, it just seems very vague to me.
Oh, I am right there with you.
It's just too vague to me. Like, you know?
We were in our Sunday school this past Sunday. We're talking about the concept of eternal truth,
Mm,
how that differs from other types of truth,
yeah,
et cetera, et cetera. And some of it is very obvious. There are truths that are very limited in their scope. I can say I'm talking to Darian right now. Well,
yeah,
that's true, but it's not true an hour from now,
yeah,
and so it's not an eternal truth in this way. But the thing about it was they were talking about, well, how do you recognize an eternal truth? And they had a process,
hmm,
and so it was, you can learn eternal truths via scripture, via living prophets today, because Mormons have a prophet and 12 apostles
right,
and so on and so forth, who, you know, obviously teach and things like that, are supposed to be receiving revelation and whatnot. And then there's also the witness of the Holy Ghost. And this is like this three-pronged
sure,
system of learning. And I'm thinking, yeah, but what about all the times that everybody's wrong?
yeah,
I can go through them and I can show you in every single book in the Bible how people are wrong,
yeah,
how these prophets have written down things that are incorrect. And I can show you in my own faith tradition how every leader of my church has said things that are incorrect. They've either
yeah,
believed things or they've taught things, et cetera, and they're wrong. And then anecdotally, in my own personal experience, I can go down a long list of times when I felt like God was really talking to me, and
yeah,
then I found out later that I was wrong.
yeah,
Actually, I had a podcast kind of about this, and
mm,
it just popped into my head, and that episode was something about wisdom, and but one of the points I was making was the courage to be wrong. Do we have the courage to admit that sometimes when we have really felt like God is talking to us and then find out later that we're wrong, do we have the courage to admit that we're wrong? Or
yeah,
do we just keep on doubling down?
yeah,
And, you and I were not big into organized religion. And I think that's
yeah.
one of the reasons why, is that organized religion really doesn't admit that they're wrong.
I
They
know,
just,
man.
they
Ugh,
just don't. And they just keep doubling down on
yeah,
being wrong. And it's just so aggravating to me. It's
yeah.
so aggravating. I don't
Same, man.
mind people being wrong. I don't mind the Bible being wrong. I don't mind
It's
a prophet
okay.
being wrong. I don't mind myself being wrong. Sometimes it feels humiliating. Sometimes it feels embarrassing, to be wrong. But it's just a part of life that we're wrong. What I can't stand is the doubling down
Yeah,
on being wrong, and just refusing to admit it, refusing to
yeah,
acknowledge it.
yeah. That's
I hate
tough.
it within myself, and so I
Yeah.
hate it.
I am, man, we are very similar in that. We're in a similar journey with that. I just such a deep question. I keep thinking about what you're asking me. And I think I like to be pushed. Like I'm definitely someone like whether it's physically, mentally, socially, emotionally, I want to be pushed, you know. That's why I get lose interest in stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm a very organized person, but if like the stimulation isn't great, I'll just lose interest in it. I'd be like,
Yeah.
well, I mean, especially as if like you're moving through your life and you're asking a lot of questions and you're growing and you're changing. And then if others around you are not seeking as well, it's like becomes boring. You know, it's
Yes.
like, don't you want to know more? You know, it's like,
Oh, yeah.
don't you know this stagnation is rough for me. So I think that's also like with organized religion, it's just so stagnant. And the statistics are bearing out. I mean, NPR had an incredible conversation with these two guys who had just published a book about the kind of the waning of the church in the United States.
The
And it was this
increasing nuns
nuns, but
population.
also like the reasons why people are attending church less. It's a
Hmm.
huge study. And it was a lot of it was kind of the double talk, like, well, if you're why are you saying this, but then doing that? You
Yeah.
know, like, and then, but interesting enough, like there was 10% of the population who just are going less because just life is busier. They just feel like, well, it's just not that interesting to me, and I'm really busy.
Yeah. It's not important.
Not that
So,
interesting. Life is
yeah.
everything else is just like this is not interesting to me. You know?
If you feel like, I don't want to, be too specific because I don't want to insult people, but if you feel like you're just getting the same general message every
Yeah,
time, it's like, yeah, I heard that message already. I'm
yeah,
good.
exactly.
And
Yeah,
and that's you and I.
yeah,
I have very close friends who absolutely love church,
yeah,
and they love the singing and the hand raising, and they just feel so
yeah.
good, and it just really rejuvenates them. And great, fantastic.
Sure. Yeah,
It takes all kinds. I'm happy that they get that out of church.
yeah.
I had this conversation with Shannon as well very recently. I actually asked her for help. I said, Shannon, you need to help me. And maybe you can help me, Darian,
Okay.
because I asked her, I said, I need to find a way to explain to people because people ask me all the time. It's like, well, why don't you like church? What do you have against,
Yeah.
religion and all these kinds of things? And I was like, well, how do I explain myself without sounding like an elitist snob,
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
which I am, but I'm not. But
No,
I'm
no,
trying
I
to have a
am. Like,
yeah, but I'm trying to have a conversation with somebody, and I'm trying to
yeah,
have a conversation where um, neither of us is shutting the other one down,
yeah.
or shutting the other one out because I said to Shannon, I was like, how do I say that I have no use for religion in my life, and I should say organized religion in
Mm-hmm.
my life because I'm too educated for it.
Simon.
I mean,
What did she
see,
say?
you
What did
see
she
my
say?
dilemma.
Yeah, I do say.
Shannon had no good suggestion for me,
Yeah.
unfortunately. she's like, she said, she's like, I understand what you're saying, and I understand how that sounds awful because the
Yeah.
implication is that the other person who's really into church is an ignorant moron and that
Yeah.
I'm too smart for them. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, that's not it. We have different types of knowledge, and I'm not trying to say I'm
Yeah.
smarter than them or I'm too awesome for church or anything. But
Yeah.
in the same breath, I am trying to say that about this specific topic. I'm trying to say, yeah, I unfortunately at a certain point in your education, you realize that organized religion is really just it is so superficial and surface level
Yeah.
that it loses its utility
Hmm.
to a person who dives deep.
Yeah. Well, and I think it maybe we're a very similar pathway on this. I think I haven't gone in a long time, and it's just because it's just not interesting. to me in the sense. Also, I think just because um, when you search deeper, it's like, well, are you really talking about that though? Like, and like
Yeah.
that's what bothers me. It's like, it seems like a lot of bells and whistles, and there's like a progressive version of church that, well, there's a conservative version of church that masquerades as progressivism to pull you
Mm.
in. This is the
Yeah.
large mega church, the bells and whistles, like, hey, we're awesome, we're cool, we're really cool. I'm gonna wear a leather jacket when I go in there. We're gonna look like we're clubbing, like we're in Vegas, we're clubbing. But
Yeah.
underneath it all, it's super conservative. Yeah, I like the progressive part. I can't stand the conservative part. And then when I always have these questions I tell Michelle, and I'm just like, I don't know, it's just weird, like this obsession with celebrate recovery. It's like,
Hmm.
but then like we'll talk about that, but not we won't talk about why people are so worked up about LGBTQI plus people. But you drink, so we're gonna celebrate. I don't know, man. It's like if you're gonna talk about it, just talk about all of it. Just be open about it
Yeah.
and just discuss it. And I've just made it my thing is like I just can't. I don't want to go somewhere where I just know for a fact they don't support people who are of different genders, ideas about who they are, represent themselves, and then they say they're just bad people because God doesn't like them. I was like, that's such horseshit. That's not true. That's actually not true.
Yeah.
I can't be on. I can't be into that.
No,
Like
I completely agree with you, and I'm completely there with you. And it's really disappointing, I guess, that
yeah,
churches can progress in so many ways. And the modern day Christian, no matter what their denomination, they really have very little idea about how our religion today has nothing to do with Jesus's religion.
exactly. That's
You
the
know what I
other
mean?
problem.
Like modern day Christianity in America is unrecognizable to the religion that Jesus was involved in his own time. And the
Correct.
and and trying to explain that to somebody is really difficult. It
It
because
is.
yeah, because they think that we're just a direct continuation of whatever Jesus was doing. And I
Yeah.
was like, nothing could be farther from the truth.
it's
No,
it's
I
so
just
rough. I'm struggling. Honestly, I'm struggling with it. Because I have been, continue to be a huge supporter of Jesus. I love the messages. I love the incredible principles. I'm in love
yeah,
with it, man. I vibe with it.
yeah.
It's who I am as a human being. How I strive to be with
Mhm.
people. It's hard when you recognize that, but you see it differently in a place, in an institution. You're like, I know you're saying this about Jesus. I'm just not seeing it though. Like you're saying
Yeah,
it, but I'm not seeing it. And then it's just, I don't know, man. It feels very punitive. Like, I don't know, man.
yeah,
It just
yeah.
feels too punitive and it feels like very dated. And I was telling Michelle the other day, I said, she said, well, what type of church would you like to go to? I said, honestly, one that was like extremely different. Like that it was like, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'd probably go if it was in a bar. I'm serious. Like if it was like, if I was going somewhere just like really off kilter that you would never expect a church to be, I was like, I'd probably go if it was in a bowling alley. I don't know. I just want to be regular. I don't want to
Yeah.
have to. I just want to feel regular. It's like,
I think I've mentioned the script to you a couple of times before, but the local Methodist, one of the local Methodist preachers here, he does it's called Crafted Conversations, and I know I've told stories about being there and offending people, but
sounds like
he
the
does it at a
assignment.
bar,
Yeah.
and he does it specifically for what you're saying. It's like
Yeah.
we're not here to convert people to Christianity. We're not
Yeah.
here to we're here to talk about important things and have real conversations about them. and we can do it outside the church because inside the church it feels like it's too stifling.
It's too stifling.
It's too
Yes.
stifling inside the church. Nobody
Yeah.
wants to have a real conversation. But here, you know, the guy who's leading the thing, he's enjoying a beer.
Yeah.
Everybody's just sitting around
He's so
enjoying
nice.
it,
Yeah.
but saying things that they probably wouldn't say in church.
There you
Some of
go.
them would, but
Yeah.
but how much more important is it to say those things?
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Like
And so
honestly,
that
I'd like to hear my pastor drop an F bomb every once in a while. Like
yeah.
not a lot, just like I don't want to hear it all the time, but every once in a while. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, yeah, I did that today too. It's like I got really pissed at something and I was like,
Yep.
fuck. It's like that's always been my thing. Even as a child, I don't relate to this person. This person is not relatable to me. That's telling me these things. I just don't I this isn't a human being to me. Like that
Mhm.
always has been my thing. And like the church that I do watch that we've been a member forever, he just seems like such a relatable guy. Like he messes up a lot. And I actually like that so much more. I've never been into the guy that wears the suit and is saying all these things. I'm like, anyways, I don't even know who this person is. I was
Yeah.
like, I need Johnny Cash up there. You know what I mean? Like, I need a guy who's like
Yeah.
struggling with his faith regularly throughout his life, but still loves God. That's me. That's me. Like, and actually, you'll say, that's probably a lot of people, you know?
I think so. Man, you nailed it, especially when you talk about Johnny Cash, because
Yeah.
that was somebody who was really strong in his faith, but he when he had conversations either through his music or just a real conversation, he was always just real.
Just
It
real.
was never
Yeah.
like, oh, well, everything's going to be okay because Jesus or whatever,
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
other kind of like really blasé, BS
Yeah.
that doesn't help anybody.
No.
No, but he
No.
talks about real struggles. And I think, a lot of especially younger generation really connected to Johnny Cash's cover of Hurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I connected with that right away as well. And of course he did. And I remember somebody quoted him saying that when he heard that song, he thought it was the best depiction of vice. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of the struggle with vice that he'd ever heard. And of course, if you heard that the original song, it sounds nothing like a
Yeah. Of
Johnny
course.
Cash song,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
man, did he make that his song?
Oh, incredible. I always
And
identified watching like Walk the Line and all that. And I was like, that's kind of like me. I remember thinking like he believes like me. He's like a wild card a little bit.
yeah,
Not that I'm a wild person, but I feel like I have no qualms about telling someone, oh yeah, I was really high on Friday night. It's like I was eating all these
yeah,
chips and stuff. And I don't know, it makes me feel unproductive. I don't want to be productive all the time, you know? Like at
hmm,
this point in my life, I don't care who I'm talking to. I just say it. And I feel like sometimes when you're like in these institutions that they don't allow you to be like that because that's wrong. That's basically
yeah,
wrong what you're doing.
yeah.
I'm just like I don't know. I can't exist like that. I want to be. Let's have it in a club or something like that. So somewhere. I don't know, man. I just need
Yeah.
like different environments where I feel like, well, let's get to the authenticity here. It's like I don't know. Even like when I would go to small groups and stuff, it just felt fake to me. I was like, everybody here is trying to be good. I'm not trying to be good. I'm trying to be me. And I'm trying to have boundaries in my life and be honest about what's happening. I'm like,
So here's the real problem with immortality, I think.
yeah.
And here's where Highlander, if you interpret it this way, I think is actually a great metaphor for this because if you are immortal, you have a lot more to lose. Does that
Mm.
make sense?
Mm.
And even if you just take that into the Christian tradition and you say, if there is an afterlife, then you have a lot more to lose. Like so much more can be taken away from
Mm.
you. And what that is an existence based on fear.
Mm.
The fear that somebody's going to take this away from you. Now, in Highlander, it's the fear that somebody's going to take your head.
Right.
But
Yeah. Exactly. It can
but in
only
the
be one.
Christian tradition, it's literally the fear of hell.
Yeah.
Um, Moses, my 19-year-old, he came to me last week, and he actually called me on the phone. He attends every Wednesday. He attends what's called an institute class, and it's basically like 18 and up young adults, and they study the scriptures and different religious topics and
Yeah.
things like that. So anyway, they were going through the parables of Jesus, and there one was the parable of the fishes. And Moses was reading through it in preparation for that institute class, and he calls me on the phone. He says, "Dad, I don't like this." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Well, what don't you like?" And he says, "Well, in this parable of the fishes, Jesus says you separate the good fish from the bad fish, and the good fish represent those who are going to go to heaven, and the bad fish represent those who are going, the wicked who are going to hell." And he's like, "I does Jesus really like send people to hell? I thought he's all about like forgiving and all
Yeah.
these kinds of things and helping people. So why is he being so, dogmatic about separating the righteous from the wicked and on all this kind of stuff?" And I said, "Moses, you're asking the wrong question."
Mm.
He's like, "What do you mean?" It's like, what you need to be asking is, what did Jesus and those around him think about the concept of hell and what its purpose is, how long you're there for, and all these other kinds of things? And he's like, "Okay, well, tell me about it." So I tell him, that during Jesus's time, the popular idea about an afterlife involving hell was that hell was basically like a purification time, and it lasted about 12 months, something
Yeah.
like that. And after those 12 months, now you're purified, you've paid for your sins, and now you can move on to your next form of existence, which is no longer in hell. And he's like, "Oh, okay, all
Yeah.
right. Well, that makes a lot more sense now." And to what we were previously saying, Jesus's religion has nothing to do with modern day Christianity, who believes that if you just, if you're a sinner, you go to hell for an eternity, and
Yeah. And the
somehow
lake of fire.
that's a
Yeah.
just God who does that.
Yeah. No.
That's justice.
No.
That's the most cruel
Yeah.
God I can think of, and it's just horrific.
Yeah.
And that's why I tell people, it's like, and the way you have no qualms telling people about, it's like, oh,
Yeah. I don't
I
care.
have no qualms telling people that the God of Christianity is one of the worst gods ever created. And I just have no problem saying that.
I mean,
And
yeah.
so, you can call me an atheist, you can call me agnostic, you can say whatever you want, but the bottom line is that I don't believe in the God that you believe in,
Mm. Yeah.
because that God is a real piece of work.
Piece of work.
He's not loving, he's not kind, he's not
Yeah.
merciful, and he's definitely not just.
Right.
Definitely not
That's what
just.
makes the whole aspect of Jesus amazing is like, okay, you know what? This all this other stuff. What are we doing here? Like, I came to free you from this. Like, and then
Yeah.
like you said something a long time ago that I think a lot of people would say it was blasphemous, but I just think it's a good thing to think about is like in many ways, the Bible has served as a prison for Jesus in many ways.
Yeah.
And so wait. When we were trying to actually move on from all of this punitive, sacrificial aspects, and it's like we're kind of done with that. And then the Bible, in many ways, kind of like, well, no, we got to bring this punitive nature of things back. And it's like that always messed with me a little bit. I was like, I'm like, this is so punitive. It's like
Yeah.
if it's about love, let it be about love. You know, period.
Yeah.
And that's why
Yeah.
I get so worked up about different things. Like I'm definitely way worked up these days. I was like, wait a minute. There's only dudes who are pastors here. Why? It's like
Yeah.
so stupid. Like that gets me riled up too.
It
This
does. Yeah.
incredible subservient nature of things and men. and the patriarchy. It's just disgusting to me. It really is, honestly. It's like we
And the
can't move
fear
on
of
from this. The
change.
fear of change,
Yeah,
it's like
the
really,
fear of change.
yeah,
They're absolutely scared out of their minds to
it's just
change anything
crazy. Yeah, that bothers me so much, man.
because they'll lose power.
Yeah,
And that's, once you have something to lose, you live by fear.
yeah, most definitely. And that's what's happening. Is like, and see, in my mind, I see this as a beautiful change. And you want to talk about inclusivity. Oh, okay, now we're being more inclusive. We're actually going to have a much more loving, kinder church that actually what Jesus wanted. Not this weird patriarchal hating of people who are different. I mean, I'm married to a white woman. A long time ago, I could not have stepped into church with my wife. Long
Yeah.
time. You know what I mean? Like, that's crazy.
In certain churches, not that long ago, and in other churches, probably not still today.
Right. I mean, it's not
You
like we're from other
know?
planets or something here. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like that's why when somebody tells me about like, oh, if aliens visit Earth, I was like, oh, we'd be shitty to them. I mean, of course we would. But
Yeah.
if it isn't that someone's transgendered, it's because they're from another planet now. We just make shit up. We got to be upset at
Yeah.
someone. Oh, yeah, they're from 83 light years away. These fuckers. Like, I don't like them. They're different. They're so different.
Have that
Like,
District 9
yeah, to be
kind of
District 9.
scenario.
Yeah, like we just treat them
Yeah.
like trash. Like what's the evidence that we wouldn't?
Yeah.
Like tell me seriously, what's the evidence that we wouldn't? It's like
Yeah. Absolutely.
it
I
will not
mean,
be peaceful. No way. Like
no, and most of that would be based on fear, and
yes.
that fear coming from knowing what we've done, knowing what
Yeah,
American
exactly.
imperialism has looked like in the
Exactly
world. And
right.
so it's like, oh yeah, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's gonna
You
happen.
know,
Yeah. It's like a definite. It's like,
probably we wouldn't have to worry about any of it because if an alien race visited us, we would probably kill them. I mean that's actually the brilliant premise of the original book, The War of the Worlds,
right.
is that the aliens were killed by human viruses.
That's right.
The non-brilliant part of that is not thinking that the aliens would have brought their own viruses
That's right.
and germs and things to us. And so we'd
Right.
probably just all kill each other
That's
with
true.
these.
Because it'll be a novel virus that we hadn't been
Yeah,
exposed to. So
exactly.
you know,
We'll just have a crazy pandemic and
well,
everybody's
that
dead.
no, that some of the people wouldn't believe in, and it
Yeah.
would be the movie Don't Look Up, and it'd be
Yeah.
like all the hats. It's just like you ever find yourself just thinking like, man, people are so weird. Like human beings are some of the strangest creatures ever, man. It's
Yeah.
like, a dog is a dog. It feels like a dog likes being a dog. Like it's like, oh man, I'm
Yeah.
a dog. It's like a whale is a
Being a
whale, and
dog is
the
great.
human is one of the only species that feels like tries not to be itself. Like it's like, oh no, I just can't be myself. Like,
Yeah.
I have all these things. No, that's not me. That's not me. It's like you're always trying to be someone else. Like
That is very true. That is very, very true. And not only are we trying to be someone else ourselves, but we're trying to make other people be somebody else.
yeah,
You know, whether you're a fan of somebody and you want them to be better than they actually are,
yeah.
or you're not a fan of somebody, you want them to be worse than they actually are. It's I mean, politics are the most easy example of
For
that.
sure.
It's just like
Yeah. Just a massive amount of cognitive dissonance. Like and now it's even worse, I feel like, because now it's like there's this element of like, I told you this, I saw you doing this, and then there's the response of, no, you didn't. That's
yeah.
not real. It's like now it just messes with now people are just messing with each other's reality. Like,
Yeah.
oh, really? Maybe I didn't go there. That's you on the camera, right? No, that's not me.
That's
It's
not
like
me.
that's
Nah.
definitely not me. And people will just go with it. For as this self-deception is so rampant now.
Yeah.
It
I
bothers me so much, man.
I watched a reporter go to a Trump rally and they were being very fair. I was very impressed with how
Yeah,
impartial the reporter was being,
sure.
and they were just asking very direct questions. They were not questions to trap people. things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
They were just
Sure.
asking very honest questions, things like, what is it about the Biden administration that, you think, they failed at, and that you want to vote for Trump again, and,
Yeah.
blah, 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 things like that.
Sure.
They're very fair. And one one guy was, just he in one of his answers hinted at the election stealing,
Sure.
thing. And so the
Yeah.
reporter just asked him quite point blank, it's like, so you believe that the last election was stolen?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And they're like, now, despite any evidence, proving that it was stolen, the guy was like, oh, the evidence is out there. And the reporter just asked him, can you tell us where that evidence is so
Yeah.
that we can go look at it?
Yeah.
And the guy just says, it's out there. And that's all they can say. That's
And
all
what
they can
else are you gonna
say.
say? You know,
That's all you can say, because you're wrong. There's no evidence.
of
It's a
course.
lie. I
Yeah.
mean, you're lying to yourself,
Yeah.
and to tell yourself that, oh, it was definitely stolen, and things like that. But yeah, there's this cognitive dissonance, like you're saying, about like the way I wish the world was. I
Yeah.
wish my candidate was really great, but they're
Yeah.
not. I
Yeah.
wish they weren't a liar, but they
But
are.
they are.
I wish
Yeah.
I wish Joe Biden weren't 81, but
Yeah.
he
But he
is.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish Joe Biden hadn't made so many mistakes during his first
Yeah.
administration, but he did. Um, he honestly had an amazing first term.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're just being really honest,
Like
Joe Biden
objectively.
had,
Like,
yeah,
yeah.
just being objective. And you're saying, yes, like every other president in history, he made a lot of mistakes.
Of course.
Not everything went well. Not everything's gone smoothly. But he's had an historic first term as president. Should he run for a second term? Probably not. And
Probably
and I
not.
think
Yeah.
and I think most Democrats agree with that
For
statement, that
sure.
he
Yeah.
probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
And but everybody just has to be honest with themselves. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I wish Biden weren't I wish he would have just done it one term and then pass the baton
Yeah.
so we could get some fresh blood in there,
Yeah.
but we definitely don't want a second term with Trump. I
No.
mean, we definitely don't want
And see,
that.
this is the cognitive dissonance of that is the same thing with a Highlander and Immortality. I think it's just really putting the blinders over to think that it'll just be so amazing. Like
Yeah,
to imagine all the time that I would have to do. I mean, the people can't finish a puzzle. I mean, it's like they're gonna like
yeah.
do all these things. They're like, oh man, I've been working on this puzzle for years. I'm like, I have hundreds and hundreds of years. Guess what? You're the same you. You ain't finishing that puzzle. Like,
Yeah.
unless they transplanted you out of you, you still not gonna finish that puzzle. I promise you that. Like,
The most frustrating thing, this goes back actually to the thing we were talking about at the very beginning. We were talking about fitness and, weight maintenance and all these
yeah.
kinds of things. The most frustrating thing is that the human body changes gradually. It changes, and it's very subtle.
Yep.
Sometimes it's insidious how subtle our bodies change. And then a couple of years go by and we realize that, oh my goodness, we did all this changing.
Mhm.
But the hopefulness about that is that the human body changes so much that we can literally reinvent ourselves.
Yeah.
We can change the way we think. We can change the way we move. We can change the entire structure of our body to one extent or another. But it requires such patience.
Yeah.
It requires such, you know, uh, just like this stick to itiveness,
Yes.
to really make that change occur the way we want it to.
Yeah.
And that's why I would never want to be a bodybuilder or anything like that. But I have absolute respect for all these kinds of athletes who have to look in the mirror and say, I need to change this about myself.
Yeah.
And then they have that fire in the belly to really stick to it and make those changes.
Yeah.
They're not changes I would make because I don't want to look like one
Yeah.
of these modern day bodybuilders.
Sure.
But but it's just amazing the tenacity that certain people
Sure.
have to be able
Yeah.
to do that. And I felt that tenacity within myself intellectually and spiritually. And for better or for worse, that led me away from what most people would consider being an orthodox
Yeah.
Mormon or Christian,
Sure.
etc., etc. But I could not be happier with the results within myself.
Yeah.
But those results within myself have unfortunately, as you have said, it's just made me very aggravated.
Yeah.
It's made me less patient with any form of organized religion
Yeah.
because you see the knowledge that we can all possess. I don't have some special, there's nothing special about me in the knowledge that I've gained over the years, other than I just read a book or
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
bunch of
Yeah.
books, that's it,
Yeah. That's right.
and they're all accessible. I didn't there was no mystery that I uncovered, you know what I mean?
He just took the
It's
time.
Yeah,
He literally
exactly.
just
I
took the
just took the
time.
time, and I had the audacity to assume that I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
And the worst thing that I think organized religion teaches people is that they do know something.
Mm.
Just the other day, they promised me that there is a God,
Hmm.
and their specific God that they believe in.
Sure.
And I just laughed. I said, well, don't make promises you can't keep, you know?
Simon.
Because if there is a God, I guarantee it's not the God you think they are.
Simon. Oh man, the way you attack this stuff's amazing. Oh man, that's so funny, man. I don't know.
Well, I
It's
mean, the more you learn about the progression, the historical progression of what led to what what became Yahweh in
mm,
the Hebrew Bible, and then what became the Trinity in the Christian New Testament, and then just that progression of where God came from and how they progressed in the
yeah,
belief and things like that. There is this terrible misconception, and we've hinted at it prior, that the God mentioned in Genesis chapter 1 is the same God that Paul's talking about
yeah,
in theologians or whatever. It's like, uh, no, these are very
yeah,
different. and and I'm not even saying that Paul doesn't believe in the Jewish God. I'm saying that God progressed and
yeah,
changed so much over those hundreds or thousands of years from one story to the next. That happens in every culture. And then
yeah,
2000 years after Paul, our God is so different from his God,
yeah,
whatever God he perceived of. And that's just natural. But all I want is for people to just own that
yeah,
and to say the God I believe in has nothing to do with, you know, the God of numbers,
yeah.
you know.
I still know
They
people are
just
looking that deeply. Like I said, just taking the time.
yeah.
The funniest part about how things are is it really doesn't. People just don't take the time. I mean, like it's like you said, it's not like you had some special power or something. Like you're like, oh, I read a book.
No,
I
I
looked I
have
looked deeper into it. And that's
yeah.
part of our surface-based culture is like, well, is it a headline? Can you give me a headline to read? I'll do that. It's like we're not even willing to do that. And honestly, I think this. I'm thinking about something you asked me earlier, about resurrection and stuff. And let's say there was like a judgment, and I'm standing before God. I honestly feel like I would say this: I believed in you my whole life. I just had a lot of questions, and I disagreed with a lot of the things the church did. I'm be
Yeah.
honest with you. I can't take that back. Like, if you love all people, then why was this happening? Why did people turn away people who loved you and then these people were like, "Oh, you know, that's wrong." And I was like, "I would always run by a bunch of dudes." Like I didn't agree with that. I believed in you, but I didn't believe in that. So do with me whatever you think that is. You know, like just be straight up about it. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like
God hates a liar, according
that's what I'm
to
saying. Yeah.
Jesus, you know.
Yeah. Let's be brutally honest. Like, yeah, did I get a high a lot? You damn right I did. I had a great time. I have no regrets. I've always been a fan of yours. I believed in you and loved Jesus. That's it for me, man. I don't know. I thought I was really nice to a lot of people. I was very caring and kind. I try to live according to these principles in the most purest form. But yeah, listen, did I give up all my possessions? No way, man. And I wasn't going to either, man.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. No, I ain't wearing no robe and walking around with sandals, man. It ain't happening, you know. Like,
Oh, yeah,
just be honest,
that's
you know.
just another way that, our version of Christianity has nothing to do with
Oh,
Jesus's,
exactly.
like what Jesus asked of his followers and what we are willing to do today. It's just, it's just not realistic.
No,
It's not realistic in any sense of the
no,
word, and none of us today are going to take a vow of poverty and things like
no.
that. Just none
Are
of
you
us are
kidding me?
doing that. It's like
I think people are
so
doubling down on the opposite of that. They're like, "Oh, I'm
exactly
trying to
what
get rich, man."
yeah.
Like,
God wants you to be rich. Boy,
yeah. Oh
no
boy, I can't
messaging could
stand
be
that
further
either.
that from the
Oh,
Bible than than God wants you to
you
be
want to get me worked
rich.
up? You got me worked up
Yeah.
now. Like, want you to be wealthy, and if you just believe enough, you will have all of this. I'm like, all right, man, come on. Like,
Yeah.
all right, well, come on. Are you serious? Like,
I mean, doesn't that sound like Satan to you? I mean,
yeah,
the
I just
Christian
like
version of
crazy. This
Satan.
is
Does Isn't
prosperity
that
gospel
exactly what,
nonsense. Yeah,
promising you riches and
yeah,
wealth and all these kinds of things?
and weird stuff
Uh,
like purity rings and chastity and all that. Get out of here, man. People are gonna be banging each other, man. It is what it is. Just be honest here, man. You know. And we actually know through a lot of research statistics that that usually backfires on people quite a bit. It's
oh
like,
yeah, there's this
of
we rebel against it, if you take something from us, we want it all the more,
course. Yeah.
you know.
It's also something
It's-
creepy about your dad giving you this stuff and like this some and it's pretty creepy actually. I mean, I don't know.
yeah,
I feel that's
there's
just me. It's kind of creepy.
well, I was just reading one of the kind of more ancient Jewish texts about creation, and it was very different from I think it was I'm trying to because I read a bunch recently, a bunch of different creation texts, and I think this one was coming from Enoch,
Mhm.
and an apocryphal text, and everything. But
Yeah.
anyway, in this version of it, God did not hide knowledge from Adam and Eve. There was no tree of good and evil that God said, "Don't eat the fruit thereof." In this one, God hates ignorance. In fact, that's one
Yeah.
of the lines in there. God hates ignorance. And I think to your defense, if I was your lawyer, and we were standing before God, and you were saying, "Yeah, I didn't agree with all," and I would step, and it's like, "God, you hate ignorance," and this
Yeah.
guy would just didn't want to be ignorant,
Yeah. Did not want to
and
be
that's how
ignorant.
I feel in my own life. It's like
Yeah.
you can judge me all you want for not living in accordance to such and such
Yeah.
religion or things like that. But at some point, I decided not being ignorant was more important than following
Yes.
the crowd,
Yeah.
and things like that. So, um,
That's what made me feel weird about like the whole aspect. I remember maybe I was in my 20s and this whole aspect of people being gay, how wrong it was. I remember when I first like heard that, it bothered me. And I remember thinking to
mhm.
myself, does this bother anyone else? It's like, doesn't this seem just like completely wrong? And why is everybody just going along with this?
Yeah.
Like I can hold these two thoughts in my mind that I think that's completely horseshit, but I still believe. And I was like, it's like we can't allow ourselves to have these opposite thoughts. I always tell Michelle this. I'm like, I feel like I have very strong faith, but there's just a lot of stuff I disagree with, and
Hmm.
I don't feel bad about it at all. Like zero. I feel bad. I'm like, too many dudes doing this. Why do they not like trans people? Why don't they like gay people? Interracial. I'm like, this is just wrong. I was just
Yeah.
like, I don't care what it says in there. This is wrong. As a person that cares about other people, you know.
Yeah. I unfortunately was a little bit slow and was quite bought into my conservative religious
Mm,
roots, growing up. And so I didn't hit that realization till, I don't know, maybe like 24,
yeah,
20, somewhere. But that, the issue of gay marriage came
yeah,
up, and having a younger brother who's gay
yeah.
and things like that. And then it just dawned on me, and I know we've had this conversation before, but I think it's worth repeating, that the thought came to me that what are the real eternal pitfalls of being gay? Like, what
Right.
does it matter in the eternal scheme of things?
What does it have to do with
What
anything?
what could that possibly, like, in the eternal afterlife with God? How could being gay or trans or whatever in this life, how could that possibly affect anything in the eternities? And when I posed that question to myself, probably, like I say, 23, 24, 25, right in there somewhere. When I finally asked myself that question, and when I didn't have a good answer for it, I immediately decided that I was pro gay all the way,
All the way,
just all
right?
the way.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I am completely changing my stance on all of this. I couldn't say that I had a stance to begin with, but a stance had been programmed within me.
That's exactly right.
And so I had to deprogram that out of
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah. Because it just doesn't make sense. Like,
Yeah.
doesn't make literally make any sense. If someone is transgender, gay, lesbian, I'm like, literally, who cares? I mean,
Yeah.
like, honestly, the parties may be way better in heaven that way, man. Like,
They are.
man, it's gonna be some incredible techno music. Like, I mean, it's gonna be bumping, man. I mean, I don't want boring people there. I don't know. It's terrible to say.
Well, my New Year's resolution. Don't allow anybody to bore me.
Yeah.
So,
You
so
can't
if
have
heaven's
that here.
boring, I'm out.
Simon, Simon, I finally made it. It's really lame here, man.
Yep.
Is there some
Yes.
back door or something?
Yeah. Just find a polite excuse to leave.
Shoot me to another part of the
Yeah.
dimension or something. Like,
Yeah. It's like, I'm not getting good reception here. I gotta
the
go out here.
Wi-Fi sucks here, man. It's
Yeah.
like it just I don't know. I just have
Yeah.
different ideas about I don't know. I just didn't vibe with me. And so I have my wife is so similar. She's just like, yeah, I never thought that was a good thing. I was like, it's not. It's like so stupid. I was like, and I'm a thing. I'm like, I want people to come out and say that it's dumb. Right? If any pastors listen to this, I don't know. Maybe you get it shuttles around to you. I want you to have the courage to actually do the right thing and get even if because doing the right thing. One of the things I've learned greatest in my life is you got to do the right thing even when it hurts, even when it
Yeah.
may not benefit you. Because that's a hard human lesson to learn. Doing the right thing's often like, this is gonna maybe give me less money. This is gonna maybe sully my thing a little bit. But don't say that you welcome your gay, lesbian, transgender brothers and sisters, and then say, well, I don't agree with their lifestyle. Forget that shit. Say, I'm all for your lifestyle. Have the
Yeah.
courage to say that. Be yourself. Be you. I love who you are. Let's go clubbing. Let's get it done. Share your playlist with me. Let's get it done, baby. And you know what? You'll reach so much more people.
Yeah.
Isn't that part of the whole thing? Reach more people. Like you just like it's like fitness. All we care about is the fit people. The other 80%, it's not
Yeah.
really worried about them. It's kind of what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're seeing a cultural shift, and it's
Yeah,
really great to see that in all aspects. We're seeing um more I don't know, plus sized
yeah,
people, and we're seeing a recognition that athletes come in all shapes and
that's
sizes,
right.
and so why can't Christians come in all kinds of
Right.
orientations? I mean,
Right.
why the hell not?
That makes
It's
so
like
much
you're
sense to me.
yeah, like you're not kicking somebody out of your church because they're overweight,
Yeah.
even though I guess they're guilty of maybe gluttony. Maybe I
Right.
don't know their situation,
Right.
but I mean, and if all sins are the same, like many of my evangelical friends have
Yeah.
told me, then why isn't gluttony being,
Not addressing
preached
that?
about? Why aren't we addressing the, obesity,
Yeah.
crisis in the United States? Why isn't that a hot topic? Why is it
Hmm.
just LGBTQ plus stuff,
Right.
And I don't think any of those things are worth, talking about, from the pulpit, unless you're just saying it doesn't matter. God
Yeah.
doesn't care. God doesn't care how much you weigh. God doesn't
Hmm.
care who you love, as long as you love them the right way.
Yeah.
That's what God cares about. That God
Yeah.
cares about, uh, uh, I guess I should say my God, because my God is obviously very different than.
Yeah. But I want someone to have the guts to say that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the place I'll get down with. I'll be like, okay, now we're actually living in accordance to how I believe it actually is. What Jesus said. I'm like, and that's my abstinence of churches. And it's just like, somebody better tell me. And I'm like, if you ain't gonna
Well,
tell me and risk it, no biscuit for you. Like,
I think I'll start a church, and it'll be called the Church of the Pragmatic Skeptics.
wait, will it actually happen, or is it just about thinking about it?
Yeah.
There's servers today, maybe, maybe,
Yeah, maybe.
maybe.
I don't know. Shannon and I have really enjoyed going off and on to the Universalist congregation
Mm.
here. And one of the things that Shannon has pointed out that she really enjoys is that they never talk about Jesus. And they always just talk about something interesting.
Yeah,
Not that Jesus isn't interesting. I'm not
sure.
trying to say that, but I'm just trying to say they're not preaching, you know, uh, Jesus directly. It's
Yeah.
preaching Jesus indirectly, if that makes any
Interesting.
sense.
Yeah.
Because it's just talking about, like, I think I shared with you one of the more recent ones we went to, and somebody was just talking about power dynamics,
Yeah.
and that how there's all these different kinds of power dynamics, and some of them are abusive, some of them are altruistic, and then there's power dynamics all the way in between,
Yeah.
but that was so interesting, and he never had to mention Jesus once, but we understand that when we're talking about these power dynamics, what we should be, going for. But it's very interesting, it's like, well, you can't always be altruistic,
Yeah.
because otherwise you end up on the cross, metaphorically speaking.
Right. Right.
And we have to live our lives. So there just has to be this balance in these power dynamics and things like that. And I
Yeah.
just thought it was very interesting lecture, because it wasn't a sermon,
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and boy, I would just love to see more of that at church,
Yeah.
talking about real things, real practical ways, because it's one thing to say, Jesus taught this. Okay, but what's a practical way that we can apply that? And
Yeah.
we hear those sometimes, but they're always really cliche.
It's cliche.
But it's always just like, oh, you can give to the needy, or you can do that. Well,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, those are all
Yes.
good things, but what about in my personal life? I mean, but being educated about how we can apply those things, like
Yeah.
being educated about power dynamics
Yeah.
and the power dynamics that exist inside a marriage, or between father and children, or between, if you're employed, between your boss and yourself,
Yeah.
or all these different kinds of things. So much more useful than, oh, if you need something, get on your knees and pray.
Yeah. 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 It's the playbook, you know what I mean? It's like a guy running the wing T formation on the in the football game. Like it's actually like 2023. Like we don't run the Wildcat anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's just I mean, I get the concept, but like we could update it and
Yeah.
update the operating system here. And
Yeah.
that's the problem is the operating system is very old. It's like the government. All the anybody who's worked in the government knows everything there is old. They don't update anything. It's just
Yeah.
like so sludgy. It's not very efficient for today's world. And I think like the try is to try to make the aesthetics more today's world. The music, the
Yeah.
way the building looks, all the sexy looking almost kind of like thing, but it's still very old though, like
Yeah.
underneath it all. I'm looking for a very progressive, forward thinking, but actual old school Jesus feel. Like you just come here, man. I'm into you, man. I love
Yeah.
you so much. And oh, what Jesus, you think these people are wrong? No, I just love these people. No, they're just being themselves. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I just want the full thing to be said. I love you, but is what always happens. I love you, but take the but out. I love you, and I'm gonna celebrate you being you. You get out there and shake
Yes.
it, baby. Like
Exactly.
I will walk in that pride parade with you. I will sell it. Like seriously, that's my type of
Yeah.
stuff, Like let's do it, man.
It's Mr. Rogers, man. I
Right.
always talk about Mr. Rogers
You
because
kind of
he's
look
just my
like him today a
hero.
little bit, You
A
got
little
the
bit.
a
I
little
got
bit
got
about
the
a
little
little
cardigan
Rogers,
going,
Rogers,
yeah,
Like,
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood,
it's a beautiful day
and
in Simon's neighborhood, right? Like,
I like you just the way you
oh,
are,
you
and
just the way you are.
that's the message, man. And that's just, you know, I always think about like raising my kids with that message. I
Yeah.
like you just the way you are. And then at the same time, trying to teach them how to develop into the person they want to become.
Right. Yeah.
And it is tricky. It's very tricky
Tricky.
to try and help somebody change and progress. And at the same time, reassure them, I like you
Yeah.
just the way you are.
Yeah.
That's a tender balance.
Yes.
And
I'm dealing with
and
that
I
right
don't,
now.
yeah. And I don't know if that balance is ever being achieved, especially in an organized
Yeah.
religion.
Yeah.
I know how much I struggle with it, and I don't struggle with the part that I love my kids just the way they are. That
Yeah.
is not the struggle. The struggle is communicating that to them,
Hmm.
and and in a way that they believe it, in a way that they know every day. I love them exactly
Yeah.
the way they are,
Yeah.
and I just want to help them become, because we're always in process of becoming.
Yeah, it's true.
So so that's just my job as the father, to help you
Yeah.
become. And sometimes that helping comes a little tough love
Mm-hmm.
sometimes,
Of course.
sometimes that helping become means, you're grounded, or what have
Most
you,
definitely. Yep.
but it's never you're grounded because I don't like you. It's
Yeah.
never, I'm helping you to become a different, or a better version of yourself because I don't like you the way you are now.
Yeah.
And that's tricky. It's
It's so
tricky.
tricky. Man, that's a secret sauce there. That's hard to actually perfect the recipe, man. That's a recipe you working on all the time, man. It's like,
Yeah.
like
So
this is my favorite meal.
and it's tricky even with like our spouses,
Yeah, of
I
course.
mean, because like obviously nobody's perfect, and obviously there are moments when we wish our spouse and they wish we were
Yeah,
different,
for
in
sure.
some way,
Yeah. Shannon just told you that already. So I just
oh gosh.
Simon, that's stupid.
Shannon doesn't need to remind me. It's well ingrained within me
No more thought
that
experiments,
I
Simon.
do I do so many things she does not like.
It's like there he goes again.
But sometimes the things that we like Shannon is so impulsive about doing certain things,
Mm.
and a lot of people wouldn't guess that about her.
I wouldn't. No.
Well, yeah, well, her impulsiveness led us to buy a Toyota Prius recently.
Yeah.
Well, and I was kind of on the fence about, okay, should we buy this car? Should we not? Blah, blah, blah. Well, a week later, our minivan was rendered inoperable
Mm.
and would cost us like
Yeah.
6,500 to fix. And it was
Right.
like, well, this was perfect time. So her impulsiveness in that situation and in many, many other situations throughout
Yeah.
our lives together has proved really valuable.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
really. Um, and and she on the other side of that spectrum really gets aggravated with how slow I am to move on several things.
Mm.
Even the way I make dinner. She's like, you know, why is it taking 2 to 3 hours to make dinner? Well, and then she bites into it and she's like, oh, this was
Yeah.
the best,
That's
you
why.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I
Man.
made enchiladas the other day and Moses helped me too. He was making like a tomatillo salsa, and
Yeah.
but I was making the sauce and all this stuff, and you know most everything was from scratch and whatnot. And it just takes the time it takes to
Sure.
do
No
everything
doubt.
like that. And Shanna's like, well, why is it going to take so long? Why don't you just buy the sauce? Why don't you just, you know,
Yeah.
this or that, the other? And then she bit into it. She's like, these are the best enchiladas I've ever had. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So, yeah. So,
Yeah.
you know, but so it just works out like that. So often the thing that we want to change about another person, it ends up being their most valuable
You're actually right
or
about
one of
that.
their most valuable qualities,
Yeah.
you know, the thing that makes them like unique and special
Yeah.
and makes, you know, them who they are. And so it's
That's a good point, man. That's really I really like that. I think just like talking to you throughout the years has really influenced me in many positive ways. I wanted to tell you that.
oh, thanks.
And
Same.
thank you. And one of the ways I thought I would share this with you because I don't like being a hypocrite. It's like a big thing for me. And
Hmm.
throughout these conversations, I realized, I may be hypocritical in some areas. I need to like work on it. One thing that I've always felt like really bad about, but never did anything about it was like eating factory farming based food
Mm.
and meat. So I made the decision like several weeks ago to stop eating meat for good.
Mm.
And it's actually been really good. And besides my wife, who was huge inspiration because she had done that a long time ago, you have also been a very big inspiration to me. And that
Look
I'm
at
not even
that.
sure why, like you
I
like
did some good in the
did
world.
some
Look at
good.
me. Look at
Yeah.
me.
I know, man. And like I'm not actually I don't think I asked you like what your reason was, but I know for mine is I've always felt really bad about the unethical treatment of animals. I'm a big animal person. I love
Yeah.
animals. And it was just like this block in my mind. I had to come to realization like I'm being a hypocrite. I'm just being a hypocrite. I need to come to
Hmm.
terms with this. And I need to do something about it. And when I did, I immediately felt better because I actually faced something that I had been grappling with a really long time. But I also attribute that to just our conversations too, which is grappling with things and thinking about it. So
I
thank you.
appreciate that a lot. Man, that is our process of becoming that is
Yeah.
so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Is that looking in the mirror and I'm doing, you know, anybody who's honest is doing that all the time. And
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and there's days you just can't. There's days you just
Yeah.
can't. I just can't I can't deal with myself today, you know? And then you take an edible and you're just like, all
Yeah, you're
right,
like,
man.
I'm good. I'm just amazing. Why would I ever think that about myself?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, but that is, I think, the goal. That's the purpose I have in my life. It's not the purpose of my life is not the next life.
Hmm.
It's this life. It's becoming the best version of Eli that I can become in this life.
Yeah.
And the idea that if I live to a nice old age, that it's halfway over with already is a real conundrum.
Mm.
And I understand completely the midlife crisis.
Interesting.
And I don't think I'm in one right now. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that, but I understand it completely. The recognition that it's half over
Yeah.
and looking at who am I? What have I
Yeah.
become? What have I done
Yeah.
with myself? Look at how much I need to do to become the person I want to be.
Yeah.
And it's taken me 46 years just to get this far.
Yeah.
I don't see how I could possibly become the person I want to be, only given another 46
Yeah.
years.
Oh, I
It's
mean,
gonna take me a lot longer than that.
you need to be the Highlander. Like, I mean, but there can there's more than one though. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
like, like you're not the only one. That's very egotistical. I mean, it's like
I think I would enjoy reincarnation, but I
mm,
would want to be able to remember the past life. That's the problem
I
with
would agree. Yeah, I don't
reincarnation,
want it
you know?
wiped clean from me. Like I want to be
Yeah,
able, oh
I'd
yeah,
want
I
to be
would,
able to like
yeah.
keep those experiences and be able to build upon them.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
that would be pretty cool. Actually, that like altered carbon. Like you could be in different bodies throughout time and stuff. And like, oh, it was you were like Simon. I want to be a black guy this time.
oh
Like,
yeah.
I want to
Oh
be.
yeah.
I'll be
But
a dog for like
but
15 years.
but not in the
Like,
1960s. I want to be a
no,
black
no,
guy.
no.
Definitely in maybe like the 2040s. You know, I want to
That's what
be a
I'm
black
saying. You know what? I have
guy.
a huge. This is another thing I've ripped people for, and everybody's like, "You're so worked up." I was like, "Time travel sounds like trash to me, going
Yeah.
backwards." I was like, "For you, time travel may be great. For me, going
Yeah.
backwards would be horrible." I was
Yeah.
like, "The future is the only place I want to exist in time travel. Why would I want to go back like 200 years? That seems like a horrible fate for me." Like
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
only people who don't, or not me, or don't have the higher level of thought process, don't think they just think, oh, it'd be great. I get to meet all these famous people from back in the day. I'm like, they're not receiving me that way. I can tell you that right now. No, 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 no.
Yeah.
They'll receive me like that in 2045 or something, 2100.
Yeah.
Like,
You could go back to like Egypt or something. I mean, I
yeah,
think you'd
maybe.
be well
Yeah.
received there.
Yeah, it's a limited spots for me.
Yeah.
Going back, it's
Just
a limited residency I'll be having back then. Like,
uh,
I mean, you'll be fine. You'll be great. You'd probably be a guy with a musket or something. I mean,
yeah, you know,
you
yeah,
could
I'd
exist
be
in a
like
lot of eras.
bringing gunpowder to I
Yeah,
don't know, some place that didn't have it before and getting
right.
rich or something. I don't know.
But you'd be an outcast though because you have too much skepticism. You would be
Oh yeah,
questioning everything, and that's
be
a
like,
problem.
the problem is even with that is like, you go back and you're like, look at what these primitive people believed.
Yeah,
And on the one hand, you want to kind of chuckle at it, and then I think
yeah,
about, oh, think about what people believe today. It's like, no,
exactly.
we're just as primitive. We're
I
just as primitive today.
I just watched a documentary, the Rael, the alien prophet. This was pretty recent. I was like, okay,
I had heard something about that, but I don't know anything about it really. I had just heard something about it.
just a guy. It's the same playbook, different hustle.
Yeah.
This guy thought that an alien came down and told him that we were created by them. And he created this whole religion out of that aliens are our creators and the aliens want us to clone ourselves. Like cloning is really important to the whole thing. I don't know why.
Hmm.
I guess they said it's a form of uh, eternal life. And I immediately, when I did this, I looked at my wife. I said, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "So you're assuming that your clone has your exact same personality and
Yeah.
everything, like you will be you? This isn't Eon Flux. I don't think it works that way. It's
Yeah.
like, I
Yeah.
think it's a different, it's a different version of you. Just looks like you. Just
That was
like, what
that
is
was
he
a
talking
deep
about?
cut for most people, I think, the Eon Flux reference. That
I mean,
was
a real deep cut, man.
yeah.
Like,
That's a
you know what I mean?
going.
It's like just assume that personality, like it's just you over and over again.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Yeah.
probably not true, honestly. I mean, it's like it's not true.
Especially if you believe in the soul,
You're right. It
like you
can't
just
be you.
transfer the soul,
Yeah.
which, I'm on the fence about anyway,
I'm
but,
sure you are,
it's
Simon.
skepticism, but,
Skepticism.
yeah.
I was like a Simon's clone, like, oh, I met your clone. Like you guys would be exactly the same. I don't think
Yeah,
so.
probably not. Well, it's that nature versus nurture debate,
Right.
and we're going to have
Yeah.
different experiences and we're going to end up being, different people. I mean,
Right.
just like my children. So, all right. So, one of the arguments I have against the eternal soul
Mm-hmm.
is that my children are definitely, definitely products of Shannon's and my
Mm-hmm.
DNA. And if they really had this eternal soul that was transferred into their human body, wouldn't my physical DNA have very little to do with their
Mm.
actual personality?
Mm.
So, just biologically speaking, I have a difficult time thinking about the eternal soul when I see that my kids are just, I mean, they are their own
Sure, of
persons. I'm not
course.
saying that, but when I look at them, I see them, I'm like, that's definitely my DNA. It's not some,
Yeah.
pre-existing thing that came
Yeah.
down from heaven. It's just a product of Shannon and myself, for better
Mm.
or for worse.
Yeah.
Sometimes for the worst.
Yeah.
For
Sometimes
the
over.
worst.
Somebody's getting that skepticism. It's like
Yeah.
somebody ain't finishing plays.
So
You got to make this humorous, man.
yeah, I know.
Can't be all serious. I don't know. I just like
Oh
I
man.
immediately thought that when I saw it, I was like, this guy assumes that like this guy will be this guy will be this guy over and over again. It'll be Eon
Yeah,
Flux. It'll be Foundation where
that
the
is so
Emperor's the
funny.
same guy over and over again. And it's like, probably not.
Yeah.
It's just but it was the same hustle. And then they said they cloned someone, and then the guy who worked in the lab was like, we definitely did not clone anyone. It was a publicity stunt. Even the scientist who said she did it, she's not a scientist. She doesn't know how to use a microscope. But then they admitted, the leader admitted that it was just for publicity. He wanted to say that they could do cloning because the Pope was against it and he didn't like the Pope. I'm like, why didn't you just say that from the beginning?
That's amazing.
And everybody believed it
That's
for like 20
amazing.
something years. And
That's amazing.
I was like, man, this is crazy. People do the same stuff over and over again. They're reptiles, they're aliens. It's this guy, these people, computer hackers are the whatever. It's just like, it's so obvious to me. I'm like, not another guy. Like,
What was it you I was talking to? Was this our previous conversation? Boy, I have a hard time remembering, but it was just about the Catholic Church coming to the agreement that we live in a heliocentric
oh
universe.
no, I
Did
don't
we
know
have
that.
that
No,
conversation?
no.
Well, I mean, the science had been out about it for hundreds of years, of
Oh,
course, but
yeah.
the Catholic Church had never taken an official stance because the official stance of the Catholic Church prior to that was that, everything revolved around the earth
Yeah.
because why not?
Why not?
Yeah. Um, so anyway, so I was talking to somebody very recently about it, and they just assumed that oh, that must have happened a long time ago. I was
Yeah.
like, well, yeah, if like 1992 was a long time ago for you.
The
And they're like,
90s.
really? It was like, yeah, I can't remember the exact year, but it was in the early 90s, if I remember correctly, that the Catholic Church finally, made the statement that we live in a heliocentric universe. And they're like, well, I mean, that must have just been the official, they're just like officially making a statement. It's like, yeah, you'd think so. But then you find out that it took them 13 years of after appointing a special like group or whoever to investigate this and make sure
Okay.
before they came out with the statement.
The Da Vinci Code? I mean, what is this
Yeah,
like?
I mean, it's just nuts. You know what I mean? It's just like,
Yeah, yeah.
and then you want to tell me that the Pope is infallible and that, he's got a direct line to God and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, but the level of ignorance displayed by organized religions is what makes me a skeptic.
And bad plays too.
Yeah.
Like, If you got a script out there, you send it to Simon, it will get ripped apart. It will
Just,
be, even if he loves it, he's gonna rip it apart.
I just want to like preach Neil deGrasse Tyson in every church. You know what I mean? I just want to go around and be like, okay, listen, I know that you think God made the universe by his word, but let me explain to you what a quark is. You know,
Talk
et
about quantum
cetera, et
entanglement.
cetera. Yeah. Yeah. You know.
Oh man, Simon, you're the man, man. Thank you for spending time with me again and changing this time, because I wanted to have more time with you. That's the selfish part about it,
I appreciated it. This was really nice, and I definitely needed this time with you.
Yeah,
It's been really wonderful to just talk about these things and to talk about these things with somebody who is intellectually open
yeah,
and morally advanced enough to just be able to, talk about these things in a fair
fair
and
way.
generous
Yeah,
way,
yeah,
and because even if you and I disagreed on some of these
yeah.
things, which I think sometimes, we
Sure,
either normally we agree on things generally, but I'm sure there's, little aspects of
sure.
things where we're just like, whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
no doubt about it.
but uh, but just the fact that we're both just very curious and want to learn.
Yeah, it's
Like I
important.
I want to learn from you. I want to hear about what you've been learning because I
Yeah,
know it's different from what I've been learning. We have
yeah,
different lives, different focuses, different,
yeah.
everything. So I appreciate these conversations where you share the latest thing you've watched or learned
Oh
or
yeah,
listened
man.
to and everything.
Yeah,
It just the lights go on in my head where I was like, oh, I need to think more about that. I need
yeah,
to I need to
yeah.
go look into that,
Watch the curse. I'm wrapping this up full circle. Watch
Yeah.
the curse. I
Okay.
would like be so fascinated to know your take on this show. I just
Interesting.
This is
Okay.
like peak Simon, like commentary, in my opinion. I may be wrong
Interesting.
about that, but just the way it's done and the acting and the dialogue, the cringiness, I'd literally be like, I have to hear what Simon thinks about this. This is
Okay.
important to know. Like, as someone who is in the arts, you've always been an artist and all that. I love to I love to hear what artists think about art. Like who
Yeah.
that I think is so valuable. I guess you could say on some level I'm an artist, but not in the sense, maybe the classical sense, that you would think about it. So I really relish the opportunity to hear from people who make music, draw, paint, act. Like, what is your idea about something like this that was created?
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I
So
guess I have to sign up for Paramount
there's
Plus now.
there's my I did the free 7-day trial because I don't care about Paramount Plus. Sorry,
Yeah.
but and I'm just binging it, and then I'm getting rid of it because there's nothing else I really want to watch in there. So yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah,
Cool. I'll do the same.
yep. All right, man. Thank you so much. I
All
appreciate
right.
you,
Talk to you
Simon.
soon.
You got it, man.